Not only was he barehanded, but he didn't even seem to have activated any kind of power, but it was an incredible technique. He vibrated the air, turning it into blades that he aimed at Chloe from all sides. Chloe reacted quickly and avoided a fatal blow, but it was still a serious injury. Even though she had instantly sensed the danger and avoided it, it seemed Veldanava's attack speed was faster. What existed was an absolute difference in ability that could not be bridged. I'm sorry, Rimuru-san. Now that we've been found out, it looks like I can't give you any more advice. More importantly, as long as you're safe, that's all that matters. Chloe was injured, but Rumina's, who had been keeping track of our movements, healed her without saying a word. Even though he had a perfect backup, it was still taking so long to fully heal, so it was a pretty serious injury. Truly, the most important thing was that Chloe was safe. There was no time to feel relieved like that. The next moment, the world came to a halt. Everyone who was able to move realized that Veldanava had taken control of time. This meant that the battle had moved to a higher level. Veldanava said, "It seems that this person can recall memories from the future. I'm impressed by how skillfully they do it, but if time is stopped, it becomes meaningless. Since we can function even in a suspended world, there is no point in stopping time." However, this was the best way to nullify Chloe's powers. To make matters even more troublesome, the three people Veldanava had revived, Jahil, Cornu, and Vega, were also rampaging normally in this suspended world. Although our fighting strength will be drastically reduced, if you look at it that way, it could also mean that we won't have to suffer unnecessary casualties. This was only if they could think of a way to handle the situation so as not to affect those who were unable to move in this suspended world. But even so, it didn't seem to have all bad aspects. If I didn't think that way, I'd probably feel depressed. Milim was also having a conversation with Chloe, perhaps to lift her spirits. "Chloe, you didn't even give me any advice when it was me, but you even taught Rimuru the correct sword stroke. That's way too favoritism." "That was the plan, wasn't it? Besides, I don't owe you anything in the first place. I don't think I'd be able to be that nice to you." That's cheating. "It's not cheating. Rimuru-san is important to me, so this is the natural response." I shouldn't have asked. "Milim, I understand that you may want to complain, but please choose the time and place carefully. And Chloe, I'm glad that you're doing well, but I wish you'd handled it in a more mature way, like getting into an argument right after suffering a serious injury. When I was there, we even shared our senses, and it was as if I was reliving the future that Chloe had seen, and she taught me the future attacks with each blow. Thanks to that, I was able to perfectly counter even Veldanava's attacks. It was different with Milim. Well, maybe they found out because I went too far, but there's no point in saying that. In this situation, the only option is to fight with your own strength." As he was thinking like that, Veldanava pointed his hand at the sword that had fallen beside Ivarage. At that moment, a sword that was different from memory, but had a similar presence, was placed in Veldanava's hand, as if it was the natural thing to do. Even in a stopped world, you can do whatever you want. He shouldn't even be able to use magic, but trying to measure Veldanava with common sense is a mistake. I steeled myself. But however, I would soon realize that this was not enough at all. "Well, is it time? If you insist on getting in my way, I'll eliminate you." "That's this one." I tried to say something back, but I couldn't finish the sentence. Veldanava thrust his sword sharply. The moment he blocked it, Soul Console Pulse Bombshow Grip Dark. I was overcome by a gentle sensation that seemed to envelop my entire body. That must be an authority. This is not a matter of superior authority or anything like that. The action began and ended without any sense of incongruity, as if it was natural. For it to happen, my consciousness faded away. Ime. Rimuru collapsed. And just like that, he is unable to maintain his human form and turns into a slime. The ones who witnessed this were Guy, Velzard, Veldora, Milim, Chloe, and Ruminas, who had just joined them, as well as Benimaru, who was in command of the entire army, standing a short distance away. Even Hinata couldn't move in the suspended world. Naturally, those who hadn't reached that realm were unable to even recognize the reality that time had stopped and were frozen in place, unable to do anything. A little distance away, the battle formation was being reorganized to face off against Jahil, Cornu, and Vega. They were so busy with their own affairs that even Diablo hadn't noticed anything strange about Rimuru. Benimaru ran over to Rimuru and supported the slime's body. Following behind, Chloe and Milim came to his side and called out to him with all their might. However, there was no response. Veldanava must have done something, but no one could understand the principle behind it. Even Guy was only able to recognize the fact that Rimuru's soul had disappeared from his body. I'm surprised. It seems that this Rimuru guy also possesses a fragment of Lucia. Veldanava said so. What shimmers and shines on his hand is Rimuru's soul. Guy observed it. A strong, beautiful glow that captivated Diablo and the others. But now, somehow, I felt a lack of strength. Endlessly cold and serene. Ruminas said, with a frustrated look on her face. If time doesn't pass, I won't be able to use magic at all, let alone resurrection. Magic, I'm out of options. Once you are freed from the concept of time, all laws and rules become different. Those who are unfamiliar with fighting methods that follow these laws will be of no use to anyone. Ruminas found this frustrating. Even if Twilight's memories were to return, there was nothing Luminous could do. At the moment, this is not something that only applies to Luminous. The same goes for Benimaru. Benimaru's forte was being able to see the big picture and give appropriate instructions. However, right now that ability was worthless. In this suspended world, those who could take action were in the minority. Rimuru-sama. Despite desperately calling out, there was no response, and a sense of despair began to seep into Benimaru's heart. Without Rimuru as their pillar of support, they would be completely powerless. This was something they were made to painfully realize once again. He had always trained himself so that he wouldn't have to rely on Rimuru, but it was all for nothing if he couldn't perform at times like this. Benimaru cried at the feeling of helplessness. Chloe gripped her sword tightly. I'll get it back. We've come this far. A happy and ideal future was sure to become a reality soon. And yet, he cannot afford to lose Rimuru here. Even in stop time, Chloe can fight. The strongest hero, known as Chloe Aubert, was not one of those fragile spirits who would give up at this point. I didn't feel like I could win against Veldanava. Alone, that is. I won't forgive you either. Milim also stood up and readied her. Heavenly demon Asura. I'll cooperate. Velzard hasn't given up either. And the strongest demon king is still alive and well. Oh dear, what fools. Even we are forbidden to directly interfere with the soul. Doing so without any restrictions is going too far. Guy was motivated from the start. And so Chloe, Milim, Velzard, and Guy, these four stood before Veldanava. When an inappropriate laugh rang out. Aza, don't panic. It was Veldora. Everyone's anger was directed towards Veldora, but at that moment, something happened that shocked everyone. Rimuru, who was being held by Benimaru, suddenly woke up. Ime. After a short pause, I woke up. It felt like a daydream. Or rather, while I was struggling in various ways, I was surprised to find that Benimaru was supporting me, without me even realizing it. I was surprised twice, because I had turned into a slime without even realizing it. He stretched with a and returned to his human form. How is it that you're safe even though I took your soul? Oh, it looks like Veldanava was surprised too. Good, good. If I can even surprise the Creator God, then that's a big win for me. However, there was no doubt that this was a troubling situation. This is the biggest crisis situation we have ever faced. The reason is that Seal isn't inside me right now. No, seriously. I was confused and didn't notice her speaking to me, but then she disappeared. I thought, what? And asked a question, but there was no reply as usual. I'm seriously in trouble. Or rather, I want to cry. This was the first time since I was reincarnated that I had felt so lonely. It was only natural that I would feel anxious. To begin with, most of my powers were properly managed by Seal. Now that Seal is gone, it means that I can no longer use them. Facing Veldanava, an enemy on a scale I had never faced before, I was now completely powerless. It was impossible not to despair. And also, as for me now, there is a suspicion that I am actually a fake. Seal's soul had completely merged with mine, making us one and the same. Inseparable body. And yet, the fact that it was taken from me means that there's high possibility that I'm the one who's left. Well, it was fortunate that he still had a sense of self even though his soul had been stolen, but it was still impossible to say for sure that he was safe. What happened is already clear and understood. My consciousness only faded for a moment, and my current self immediately returned to normal. Yes, inside Veldora. Veldora and I were connected by the soul corridor, meaning we each had backup within us. Veldanava's attack this time was a multidimensional, continuous attack that could seal off even such tricks, but then a miracle occurred. The moment my soul was about to be stolen from inside Veldora, only my core heart, my ego, was expelled, and so I was left behind inside Veldora. It seemed like there was nothing I could do in that state, and I began to worry. Well, what should I do? But then I came up with a desperate plan. That's right, I have the pseudo-soul Gizakin, he remembered with a bold mind, determined to survive to the end. Since I had the idea, I had to try it. With Veldora's help, I dropped a pseudo-soul into the slime's limp body. By projecting my consciousness onto it, I successfully revived it. All of this was possible because I had reached the level of an information life form. Digital nature. I immediately realized that in that moment, Seal had saved me. Otherwise, it cannot be explained. Also, I felt like something was being said to me at the end. You, Master, are the strongest. I think that's what he said, but it was a trust that was too great for me at the time. Former office workers are not a warrior race. The truth is that he only wants to fight battles that he can win, and he wants to run away from situations where he is likely to lose. Don't be so unreasonable. That was his honest feeling. I am grateful for the help, but without Seal, I think my fighting ability would be about the same as Gobuta's. Well, he's still able to move around even in this suspended world that's currently ongoing, so he's better than Gobuta. Not only can he not use his authority properly, but his soul is a fake. Although I believe that I am the real deal, it is not surprising that others would see me as a fake. What on earth could I possibly do in that state? Just as I was feeling weak, I felt Benimaru's gaze on me. She was relieved that I was safe, and trusted me without a doubt, even though I was unreliable. I could sense that feeling in her gaze. Oh well. All I can do is act tough and bluff. Still, I want to live up to that trust. With that thought in mind, I stood up on my own 2 feet again. I readied my sword again. And regardless of the stop time, he sends out his own will through the information child. You were surprised, weren't you? You seemed quite confident, but maybe you thought you'd already won. That's a shame. You can't defeat me with an attack of that magnitude. I provoked Veldanava. If he could provoke him and make him lose his composure, perhaps he could find a chance to win. He was betting on that slight possibility and was going to try everything he could. Veldanava was silent. He seemed a little irritated, but his emotions didn't seem to be that shaken. Or rather, it seems to be observing the soul that it took from me. Rimuru-san, are you really safe? Rimuru, aren't you pushing yourself too hard? Chloe and Milim asked me worriedly, but this was a situation where I had no choice but to act tough. We have no problem with that, but more importantly, you guys, Veldanavas. Attacks seem to directly interfere with the soul, so defending yourself is completely pointless. As a countermeasure, keep your distance. If you get touched, it's all over. Perhaps contact is the condition for it to be activated. Even if it was through a sword, the attack would still be activated. In the first place, it all depends on the power of interference with the information element, but long-range attacks are difficult when time is stopped. It's sad that I can't say for sure that it's okay if I can't be touched, but I think it's better than losing without even understanding the meaning. At least, it was a technique that no longer worked on me. Therefore, the best solution in this situation is for me to sacrifice myself and gather information. And so, I'll take on the challenge. With that said, I walked up to Veldanava. Kuehahaha, if we leave it to Rimuru, we've practically won. There's no way that's true. Veldora has always had a lot of trust in me. Like Milim, she doesn't seem to think for a second that I'll lose. Especially Veldora, who should have realized that I was a fake. Well, there are bad sides to my side, even though I'm stubbornly trying to act tough. Ha, leave it to me. Now I found myself laughing and responding again. However, don't forget to double-check. Veldora-kun. What is it? If I lose, I'll leave the rest to you. Kueahaha, that's a funny joke. Veldora said this with a laugh. Then he switched his telepathy transmission, so that only I could hear, and told me something important. Rimuru, my brother can only be defeated by you, who can move even without a soul. Therefore, if you do not win, then we will lose as well. Don't ask for too much. I'm just an old ex-salaryman who can't do anything without seal. Anxiety was swirling in my mind. However, this cannot be shown to the public. If a leader becomes weak, those who follow will become confused. Besides, I didn't want to betray everyone's feelings. Veldora had realized that I was a fake without a soul, and yet he still placed his absolute trust in me. I wonder just how much he overestimated me. For me right now, this was both a joy and a burden. Guy and Velzard kept quiet and watched my movements. However, since they had no means to counter Veldanava's attacks, they probably thought Veldora was right. It was a tricky story. This has happened many times before, but this time I'm alone. Without his reliable partner, Seal, he must now face this battle alone. To be honest, I was pretty depressed. I want to run away, but there's no point in running away. Since I have no choice but to do it, I will maintain my aggressive stance until the very end. That's my pride and my way of life. Well, I'll try my best. With a wry smile on my face, I pointed my sword at Veldanava. That's when it happened. Rimuru-sama, there's no need to push yourself. Those were Benimaru's words, expressing his concern for me. When I heard that, I was a little startled. Even though I was trying so hard to look cool, I felt like I had been seen through. Benimaru continued. Rimuru-sama right now reminds me of when I was planning a suicide attack on the pig-headed emperor and the orc lord. I was foolish enough to challenge an opponent I knew I could never defeat, knowing it was impossible. Benimaru, you don't have to act tough. We have no intention of making you shoulder all the burden. If it's no good, that's fine, but we won't hold any grudges. I turned to Benimaru and laughed to hide my embarrassment. Hee, did they notice? Of course, right. Back then, I was also trying my best to reach my full potential. As the next leader, I can understand at least a little bit of Rimuru-sama's feelings. I felt like my mood had lightened. After all, just knowing that there is someone who understands you is enough to fill your heart. Being in a leadership position can sometimes be lonely. However, if you have friends you can trust, I don't feel alone anymore. Even without my partner's seal, I was able to believe that I wasn't alone. My conversation with Benimaru gave me the encouragement I needed, and I regained my courage. I was determined to keep up this momentum and take on Veldanava, but misfortune strikes suddenly. Dangerous. Dodge Rimuru. Benimaru had already taken action before the thought transmission sent by Chloe and Milim reached them. The sword came flying without a sound or even a sign. As if to protect me from that threat, Benimaru stepped forward to shield me. I blocked the sword with my beloved sword, Crimson Gu Ren, but it was far from enough power to face a Genesis class opponent. Crimson Gu Ren instantly broke into pieces, and Veldanava's sword pierced Benimaru's chest. I was completely off guard. This is the result. Is Benimaru? HMPH, it's okay, I said. No, it's not okay at all. TCH, it's impossible after all. I don't have the magic to use in this situation, so there's no way I can save this person. Rumina said cruelly. Benimaru's enthusiasm is steadily decreasing. Even though time should have stopped, the flow of energy continues unabated. Don't make that face. Protecting Rimuru-sama is my job. Veldanava's attack was a blow that eroded and destroyed the soul. Benimaru's soul was in a state of waiting to be shattered into pieces and scattered away. Unless Veldanava's authority was cancelled, the information child would be erased and Benimaru's very existence would return to nothingness. Even though you're just an automaton without a soul, you're still loved by him. Or maybe he didn't realize you were a fake. Veldanava was speaking in the distance, but I didn't have the time to listen to what he was saying. Benimaru is more important. Huff, it seems that gods and such don't understand anything. Rimuru-sama is Rimuru-sama. Benimaru, who was already on the verge of disappearing, passionately retorted. Even I don't believe in myself. Benimaru. Rimuru-sama is hope. What is that? You must not think that you have lost. If you don't think you've lost, it's not a defeat. All you have to do is think of your next plan, or even the plan after that, and keep trying until you win. Justice has no meaning unless it wins. If you win in the end, that will be justice. Benimaru's words reminded me of that truth. You don't need to talk anymore. Benimaru, you should focus on recovering. No, I already. It'll be fine. Your unborn children are waiting for you to return. Don't lose heart. That's an order, don't die. If everyone is asking me to do unreasonable things, then I can't give in either. I gave him an order in a cruel tone that Benimaru, who had realized he was facing death, would never be able to follow. Benimaru chuckled faintly. As if responding to that smile, I began to interfere with Benimaru's broken soul and began the treatment. The treatment is simple. I had given up on the idea of being able to use my powers properly without Sealson, but now that this was an emergency situation, things were different. This was no time to whine and say I couldn't do it. I had to do my best. I have witnessed Seal's miracles countless times. I knew the steps, so I just copied them without thinking too hard. I don't know if it's the right answer, but if we don't do anything, Benimaru will die. In that case, we have no choice but to try it. Although I had exposed my defenseless back in front of Veldanava, it wasn't a problem as I had no intention of dying from 1 or 2 attacks. I focused on Benimaru and prioritized finishing his treatment. The important thing is to not lose the information. That's where my slime cells come in handy. This is an excellent tool that allows you to back up memories one by one, so if only a portion of it remains, you can restore the entire thing. If I just put this in, the rest should work out somehow. Of course, that's not all. I'll use my soul devourer to devour all of Veldanava's strange authority. This was also a technique that the slime could use instinctively, so it was completed without any problems. Now all that's left is to wait for Benimaru to wake up, but here's where I add a little ingenuity of my own. With the aim of replenishing the lost energy, I tried injecting the energy of void collapse from my imaginary space. I saw Diablo doing it, so I tried to imitate him. It went rather well, and I could feel my slime cells that I had transplanted into Benimaru becoming active. However, that was all I could do. A short yet long period of subjectivity passes. Although the treatment was supposed to be over, Benimaru did not wake up. Anxiety rises in my heart. At this point, there's no choice but to continue until Benimaru wakes up. Although time has stopped now, Benimaru is able to move even in the suspended world. However, the moment he loses consciousness, he is trapped in the suspended world. That's right, and then an idea struck me. Because my slime cells are activated, my body is regenerating even when I'm unconscious. Benimaru was left behind in the suspended world when he fainted. So he'll probably wake up once time starts to flow again. Maybe, but all we can do now is trust Benimaru. Normal recovery magic cannot be used in a suspended world. Therefore, at this stage, I do not have the means to wake up Benimaru. When he realized this much, he heard Veldanava's exasperated voice. They're desperate. As he said this, he seemed to call the sword back into his hand. I wanted to finish it before Veldanava came after me, but it seemed I wasn't in time. There's no other way, so I'll take the hit. I prepare myself for that. And then, at that very moment, Veldanava's sword was about to be released once again. Just wait a bit. Ramaris shouted as she appeared and got in between me and Veldanava. Why is Ramaris here? Or rather, how did we get here? It seems I wasn't the only one who was surprised in this way. Isn't that Ramaris? What are you here for? So you can move even when time has stopped. I'm surprised by that, but you won't be of any use in this battle, will you? I mean, is it too late now? Guy and Milim were talking to Ramaris. Dino, who had only been observing the whole time, was half-seriously asking Ramaris a question. All of these were harsh words to say to an old friend, but they were points that everyone would agree with. The answer lay in the person standing behind Ramaris. It's Zijin. Rimuru-sama, I have arrived before you. Zijin said as he knelt behind me. I finished treating Benimaru without any problems and stood up. Ramaris' appearance was an unexpected stroke of luck. Thanks to that, I'm safe. I look at Zijin. Again, he has become so strong. It's like he's a different person. The fact that he was able to travel this far using space transfer, even when time had stopped, suggests that he has acquired some pretty incredible powers. I'm glad to have him on my side, but he still isn't strong enough to face Veldanava. It seemed that even Zijin would be unable to deal with direct interference with the soul. Please protect Benimaru here. I will defeat him. I entrusted Benimaru to Zijin. As for Benimaru's treatment, there is nothing more I can do. Therefore, the correct thing to do is to focus on Veldanava. Rimuru. Yeah. At this point, Ramaris spoke up. I want you to leave this to me. Leave it to me. Is there anything you can do? Of course, I can use magic anytime. I think I can help you, Benimaru-chan. Seriously. He was underestimating Ramaris. If that's true, it's an amazing story. Well, but I'm just a little short on strength, so I'd like you to lend me. Your strength? No, this is suddenly getting suspicious. But she was still able to function in this suspended world, and the full extent of Ramaris' power was still shrouded in mystery. Even Seal couldn't reproduce. Ramaris' unique ability, labyrinth creation, small world. If lending their strength would be enough to treat Benimaru, they were willing to lend as much as they could. What should I do? Could you connect me and you with a soul corridor like you did with Benimaru-chan? I'm not sure since Seal isn't here, but I'll do it in the same way as I did earlier. Hey, you don't have a soul, do you? It's just your imagination. Ramaris was making some kind of fuss, but I ignored her and finished my work. At that moment, Ramaris' growth was visibly apparent. You're in your adult form. It's all in your head. It was definitely not my imagination, but if I said that, it would come back to haunt me. I quickly changed my mind and decided to leave this to Ramaris and do what I had to do. Guy thought, looks like I won't have a chance against Veldanava. Ruminas seemed to feel the same way and left, saying, it seems there's nothing I can do here. They seem to be having a hard time, so I'll help them out. That's fine, Guy thought. Rumina's powers do not activate while time is stopped. After seeing Rimuru heal Benimaru, she probably decided that there was nothing she could do. Or rather, he decided that if he wanted to put his power to good use, it would be better to join Ultima and the others in their battle. Additionally, there was no longer any need to heal the elite of humanity. Mizari and Rain had taken their place, but with time stopped, there were fewer people who could move. Rather than protecting those whose defenses have been reduced to zero, it would be better to lure the enemy out of their range of influence. Even the holy purification barrier has already become meaningless, so it would be better to fight in a place where there are no people. The fact that she was able to make such a decision in an instant suggests that Ruminas has not given up hope yet. As expected of Ruminas, as always, you're a reliable guy. Guy also expressed his gratitude to Ruminas. Even for Guy, there was little he could do against Veldanava. Therefore, they are more wary of Ivarage than Veldanava. On our side, we were stabbed by an unfamiliar sword and a mysterious change was occurring, making the situation unpredictable. Guy wanted to stop them, but he felt that it would be ominous to get in the way. The correct answer would be to monitor the situation and deal with it appropriately. And so, he was ready to watch over them vigilantly. Even so, Guy thought at the same time. The attack Veldanava showed was a direct interference with the soul. Just by seeing it, it was clear beyond a doubt that Veldanava was the real deal. Even the originals, who are the kings of demons, are unable to directly interfere with the souls of living beings. If that were possible, combat would not be possible. If one is to interfere with the soul, one must first do something about the spiritual body or astral body. Otherwise, no attack would have any effect. It's an incredibly dangerous technique. Even Guy would have been helpless if he had seen it for the first time. The soul is the core of what makes up the self. Interfering with it is tantamount to having one's life and death taken into account. Guy's view was that a battle would not be possible. If I use my powers, can I somehow fight back? I'll think about it, but I won't know until I try it. After all, even if one protects one's own soul, it is unclear how far the influence of direct interference will extend, and even if one tries to escape the attack by using separate body-soul body-body, like Velgrind, it will still be interfered with. There was no other option but to fight back, and if he failed, defeat was certain. making it a very bad gamble. Even Guy felt that he didn't want to take on the challenge. However, there is a problem. Rimuru remained calm. No matter how you look at it, this is abnormal. Guy could see the shining pseudo-soul Gizakin inside Rimuru's body. What was once a vessel made from demonic steel had now been bathed in Rimuru's magical energy and had evolved into the ultimate metal Hihiricane. It appears to be performing adequately as a vessel for filling up the information particles. However, its structure is such that it reflects the ego by synchronizing with the soul that resides within the body. And yet, Rimuru has lost his soul and only retains his ego. How does that work? I mean, how can you even move? Even Guy didn't understand the logic. Veldanava called them automata, and that was no surprise. No matter how you look at it, the only explanation is that they programmed it in a way that would deceive the other party. In other words, Veldanava was aware that Rimuru had set up a gimmick and was trying to deceive him, even though he had been defeated. Rimuru had already disappeared, and the magic doll, golem that obeyed his orders, was simply imitating its master. If you think about it like that, it makes sense, but in Guy's eyes, the person standing before him looks like Rimuru himself. This is because it would be impossible to create a program that would recreate Rimuru himself to this extent. And as Rimuru began treating Benimaru, he did something outrageous. It was a divine technique that even Guy was stunned by, something that was absolutely impossible for a mere program to do. What can I say? Rather than being shocked, I'm getting angry. That Guy, without even using any authority, just transformed his body as if it was the most natural thing in the world. He was probably trying to replenish the energy that Benimaru had lost, but he had clearly converted the dangerous nothingness into energy that suited Benimaru and transferred it to him. Even so, Benimaru didn't wake up, which was understandable. Excessive energy had been injected into his body, so he wouldn't be able to move until he had time to adapt. Hey, stop messing around. That was what Guy was really thinking. I wanted to complain and tell him not to mess around, but I struggled to hold myself back. I could understand it, but it was such a dangerous thing I didn't want to do myself. And here comes Ramaris. As soon as some sort of negotiation was completed, in an instant, Ramaris grew. True to her words, she transformed from her small fairy form into the adult form of the Spirit Queen. We were left wondering what they were doing. If extremely dangerous energy can be converted into a power that anyone can use, then, if that's possible, then anything is possible. There was no way that a mere programmed doll could commit such dangerous and unreasonable acts. Guy's reasons for determining that Rimuru was the real deal were now crystal clear. And so, standing before him was Rimuru himself, more serious than ever before. He had always been carefree and always avoided conflict, but right now Rimuru seemed to be seeking battle himself. Veldanava, the creator god and former friend. As one of the 8-star demon lords, Rimuru is a comrade that Guy respects and relies on. So which power will prevail? From Guy's perspective, it was no wonder he was so curious. Velzard also couldn't believe her eyes. He knew that Rimuru was amazing, and he had taken care of not only his younger sister and brother, but even himself. That's why I decided to side with Rimuru rather than my brother. However, the winning rate is still low. So even if they couldn't win, they were determined to fight to the end without giving up and show their will. However, there is a problem. Before they knew it, Rimuru and Veldanava were engaged in a one-on-one battle. What's more, it's surprising that the match turned out to be a fairly good one. They would defeat Evil Age, reunite, and combine their powers to strike back. That was what Velzard had thought, but her plan had already fallen apart. However, the balance quickly shifts. Veldanava was, after all, an unmistakable god. Ignoring all authority, he launched an attack that could not be defended against, directly stealing the soul. This would probably be enough to take down even Velzard and the others, who were dragon species, in one blow. Even the amount of energy, or the strength of attack or defense power, seemed to be completely meaningless in front of Veldanava's work, which ignored all kinds of authority and obtained only the results he desired. Since ego and authority reside in the soul, the match ends the moment this is taken away. As proof of this, Rimuru was also defeated once. I tried my best, but it was impossible after all. That was the moment Velzard thought. To his surprise, Rimuru calmly got up. An existence without a soul that moved solely on ego. Something like that was a huge deviation from Veldanava's design concept. It's impossible, that was Velzard's true feeling. Rimuru then said that he would take on Veldanava himself. Since his soul had already been stolen, that attack would have no effect on him. That's probably what it meant. After warning the others to evacuate, Rimuru seemed to think that it would be fine, as long as they didn't come into contact with him, but she wanted to know his basis for that. Velzard was astonished. Certainly, the best way to influence an information child, when time is stopped, is to make contact with it, but no, so Oni-sama is not omnipotent either. He has abandoned his omnipotence and reached this point, so not everything goes the way he wants it to. That's probably what it is. I had given up, thinking I'd never be able to defeat it, but that's not the case. The proof of this was that Veldanava was in a panic. Although his emotions were unwavering, the fact that he acted as if he was trying to catch Rimuru off guard was proof of that. As a god with an overwhelming presence, he should have defeated all enemies of gods head-on. Instead of doing so, he was trying to find an opportunity for Rimuru to decide the fight, which suggests that Veldanava himself sees Rimuru as a threat, something that cannot exist within one's design concept. That is, something that is outside the scope of one's imagination. Rimuru, an extraordinary singularity, harbors the potential to destroy even gods. Rimuru was furious. Due to Veldanava's surprise attack, one of his subordinates who tried to protect Rimuru was injured. I think his name was Benimaru. Rimuru is a gentle person, but he hates seeing his comrades get hurt. I wonder if he has the habit of tolerating pain when it comes to himself, but is sensitive to the pain of others. Oni-sama, you may have just made a huge mistake. Rimuru himself was safe, but this was an even bigger problem. All doubt had vanished from Rimuru's anger. There had been a range of emotions fluctuating, but now it was all anger. It feels like I have decided what I need to do and what I need to accomplish. All that's left now is to wait for the verdict to be made. Velzard witnessed the conclusion. To that end, what we can do now is... Oh dear, although it is unclear to what extent my authority will be effective in this suspended world. Velzard used her powers to the fullest extent and applied the defense of the people gathered here. Because all movement had stopped, she used complete immobilization to prevent them from collapsing. With this, I should be fine from most attacks unless I get a direct hit. With this in mind, Velzard demonstrated her true abilities as a guardian goddess. Milim also noticed Rimuru's anger. Unlike his usual attitude, it was rare to see Rimuru being serious. As I thought, it's scary to make Rimuru angry. Milim cares more about Rimuru than Veldanava, who doesn't seem to understand when she hears that he is her father. To be honest, it was nothing but Veldanava's own doing that angered Rimuru. In the first place, Rimuru is often scolded, but he rarely gets angry. Although he is extremely angry with Veldora, it is just like playing around. Incidentally, Milim herself has also been scolded, but since Milim's brain only remembers what is convenient, such facts are long forgotten. Well, let's leave that aside for now. One example of Rimuru's anger was the war with the Pharma's kingdom. During the battle with Velgrind, when Veldora was under his control. This has happened several times before, but there is one thing they all have in common. An enraged Rimuru will stop at nothing to stop it. Rimuru usually tried his best not to show off his powers. They are kind to the weak and like to discuss things. On the contrary, they dislike solving things through violence. And even when they do get into a fight, they don't really go all out. It was rare that he was able to fully utilize that power. Rimuru even sealed away abilities and skills that he deemed too powerful. That's Rimuru, but when he loses his temper, it's a different story. The many extremely dangerous powers that had been sealed away by reason were released without any hesitation. Even Milim couldn't tell what Rimuru was capable of right now. Her own memories of when she was in Stampede, Madness, were vague, hazy. And vague, but she remembers Rimuru dealing with her flawlessly. He was gentle, yet strict and precise, so as not to hurt Milim. If Rimuru had been serious at that time, maybe I was dead. If he had the justification of eliminating a threat to the world, no one would have complained even if he had destroyed Milim. And yet, Rimuru absolutely did not take such a measure. Rimuru never gives up, striving for the best possible outcome until the very end. Even so, Milim thought, how did he become so strong in just a few years? It had only been 5 years since Rimuru was born as a slime here in the base world, and yet the balance of power in the world had changed dramatically. Before and after Rimuru's birth, including the development of civilizations and cities. In this world, survival of the fittest is the truth. I don't think the weak should die, but in a sense it was natural and inevitable that they would be tossed about by the theories and desires of the strong. However, Rimuru is throwing a stone at this common sense. He wanted to create a system in which everyone has value and can contribute to society, and he was working to make that a reality. Even those who initially thought it was just a pipe dream were soon absorbed in the ideal. The important thing is to separate the habitats. It is important to respect the other person's wishes, but if your values just don't match, it is also important to distance yourself. There were tea,